Hello friends, it is Fiona Morris from Nourish and Flourish, and I'm here to wish you an empowered new moon in Scorpio. So the new moon is the time in the lunar cycle when the moon is completely black in the sky. So we cannot see it. It is invisible to the eye, which is very apt for the energy of Scorpio. Scorpio is a water sign. It's a fixed water sign, and it is very deep, and it often encapsulates things that are kept in the shadows, which are quite secretive and hidden. So yeah, this is a very potent time to sink into those themes and actually go to those places that we often will shy away from. So don't miss this opportunity to really do some of that deep inner work, to do some of the shadow work. It's a very potent opportunity for healing at this time if you can allow it. So at the time of this recording, the new moon has already been and gone. However, we are still in the moon in Scorpio period, and we are happening to be in between lunar Samhain and solar Samhain. So solar Samhain falls on the 6th or 7th of November this year, and it is when the sun is at 15 degrees of Scorpio, one of the cross-quarter days, one of 4 cross-quarter days that we have every year. So we often think of Samhain as the 31st of October, which is calendar Samhain, but Samhain season actually does extend beyond just that one day. It also encapsulates the new moon in Scorpio, which is lunar Samhain, and also solar Samhain, which is the 15-degree, the sun went at 15 degrees of Scorpio. So it's a very potent time. We have a lot going on in Scorpio at the moment. I will share more about that when we look at the chart. So meanwhile, transformational power struggles is the heading that I have given this astrology chart reading. When we see the word struggles, we aren't necessarily filled with all the joys. However, there is a spark of hope in the sense of seeing the benefits of what struggle, the gifts that struggle can bring. And what I mean by that is growth, spiritual growth, emotional growth, learning through being challenged and coming out of some really tricky times in many ways. And although that may not feel that there's much good to come out of that, the strength that we garner through moving through periods of struggle give us gifts that we can bring with us far beyond the present time. So yeah, if you think about a butterfly coming out of its cocoon, when its skin or its surrounding structure has become too tight and it no longer is fit for a purpose, it is time to break out of that shell and emerge into a new world, completely transformed. A butterfly transforms from a caterpillar into a magnificent, beautiful creature. And in the same way, the temporary life-changing struggle, which can feel like life or death when you are going through them, and in some cases can bring either literal or metaphorical death, not necessarily actual death, although it can, in some cases, bring us close to that point. For others, there may be actually a releasing of loved ones or structures of things that we have held dear for long periods of time that it is now time to let go of. It will manifest very differently depending on the individual. However, however it has manifested for you or will continue to manifest for you through this time, inevitably transformation comes out of it. And yeah, it isn't always easy, but if we can harness this energy in a positive way, a lot of good can come out of it. So the subheadings I have chosen are speaking to and with power, revelations and awakenings, and lotus blooms out of mud. So I shall show you the chart now, and you shall see why I have chosen these. So here is the chart of the new moon in Scorpio when it was exact at 21:14 GMT. And this is courtesy of www.astro-seek.com, which offers free astrology charts for those who don't necessarily have their own astrology software. Maybe you're not even at the stage of reading a chart, but if that is the case, then allow me to explain what it is that you see before you. So over here, you will see little symbols for the sun and the moon, that you can see this circle with a dot and a crescent moon shape, which is where the sun and moon was at when it was exactly new. So I read this chart, and I have committed to reading the new moon astrology chart for at least the next 6 months as a little challenge to myself and as a way of kind of showing up and sharing this information with anyone who feels drawn to hearing it. And yeah, so here is the sun and moon in Scorpio. So we can see that it forms this very strong red line in direct opposition to this symbol here, which is Uranus, however you want to pronounce it. It is at a very strong opposition to our new moon. And Uranus brings a sense of electricity and unpredictability, of surprises, which sometimes can be positive, unexpected change. It can depend also your relationship to change itself. Some people find change very exciting. It brings adrenaline, it brings challenges that you can get your teeth into. Some people really do thrive on change, so it's not necessarily a bad thing. But equally, on the back of what we can safely say has been a very challenging couple of years. This may be for some the unexpected change that breaks the camel's back, so to speak. So for good or ill, Uranus is in the mix to shake things up. So hence the heading I gave, revelations and awakenings. So as you can see from the lightning in the dark night sky image that I chose for this month's kind of background, A lightning bolt has that energy of unpredictable energy, which causes this flash of illumination where we can suddenly see things when we couldn't see them before. And so certainly where we've got Uranus in opposition to Scorpio, there is this kind of sense of, yeah, our nervous systems will be running quite high, things will be coming out of nowhere, and yeah, it can be quite exciting, but it can also be really pushing us to our very limits. And not only have we got this opposition, which is already a challenge in itself, but we also have both ends of this seesaw at a T-square to this symbol here, which is Saturn in Aquarius. So these are the fixed signs. Fixed energy is usually quite stable, very determined, quite immovable. But when we've got Uranus in the mix, there is a real shaking up of the immovable forces in our lives. All the things that we thought we had certainty and security in is being shaken up to the very core, and possibly to breaking point. And all kinds of feelings come up at beginnings and endings. There may be grief and loss and fear and uncertainty of how we can carry on when life seems to change beyond recognition. But equally, there can be a sense of excited anticipation for the promise that lies ahead, for a sense of renewal, for a sense of, things changing. And yeah, I use the word power struggles. Certainly, well, Scorpio itself, one of the key words for Scorpio is power. And when it's square to a planet like Saturn, Saturn can be seen as authority figures, it can be elders, it can be people who have power over individuals or communities. They're considered the responsible ones, which can attract all kinds of rebellion and bucking up against. So it could be authority figures in terms of, public officials within our communities and our countries. Could be, these members in our family. Also, so yeah, this can appear in different ways depending on the individual, but generally there is this kind of sense of some real sharp edges being highlighted at this time to old structures which, like I referred to with the butterfly's cocoon, it has felt safe and cozy, or whatever has felt safe and cozy for some time, eventually stops feeling safe and cozy when we grow out of them. So it's a bit like that old pair of jeans that at one point we really loved, but after a while there's just, we can't fit into them anymore. So that's another kind of metaphor, I suppose, for learning to let go. So there can be a lot of grief at this time. Whenever we're talking about Scorpio energy, death is a key word of Scorpio, which may be sadly literal, but also metaphorical, in the sense of letting go of places, people, situations that it is time to move on from for whatever reason. We also have Mars in Scorpio and Mercury, which is, well, will be in Scorpio tomorrow. So yeah, we already have what's called a stellium. So stellium is when you have 3 or more planets in one astrological sign or house. And that stellium is going to be emphasized by Mercury joining the party. So yeah, so Mars is one of the traditional ruler, or is the traditional ruler of Mars, of Scorpio. And Mercury is going to be shifting into Scorpio too. So wherever Mars is, brings energy, brings power, brings assertiveness, brings a kind of warrior-like energy into the mix. And as you can see, there's a little red line here, which indicates that Mars and Mercury are conjunct. And they'll become even more conjunct over the next few days. And so speaking to and with power was one of the headings I gave. And so that was referring to the fact that Mercury and Mars are in conjunction, which so Mercury is about how we think and how we communicate. And so Mars and Mercury's a little bit more rational. It's a bit more thoughtful, a bit more skillful with words compared to Mars on its own. So there may be, this kind of sense of being more assertive with the way we communicate around things which are scorpionic. So be having conversations, discussions, possibly arguments and conflict, depending on how skillful we are, around the Scorpio subjects, which include things like sex, which include things like death, taxes, money, not usually our own, but other people's money. Could be things like inheritance or loans or that sort of thing. And yeah, these are areas that people tend to find difficult to talk about. And so these conversations can trigger us in all sorts of ways. With Mars being the ruler of Scorpio, in traditional astrology, it really highlights how instinctive that energy can be. And so if we think about suppressed emotions that we kind of stuff down and lock in a dark cupboard, which all of a sudden have the sun throwing a spotlight on it, and Mars coming in and kind of throwing the door open, and the Mercury in the mix kind of shouting and talking about it. It really kind of spills all the skeletons out of the cupboard, so to speak. So yeah, so we've got all that going on, and we also have Mercury at a square to Pluto. So yeah, so Pluto is also the more modern ruler of Scorpio. And so with Mercury at a square, which is a challenging angle. I'm not going to say a bad. I don't like to use the words good or bad, because I think some people thrive on challenges. And actually, in retrospect, good can come out of these things. And so I don't like to use the labels good or bad, because if we can see things zoom out from a higher perspective, we can sort of transform the way we perceive these things. from a higher level. So yeah, but the square from Mercury to Pluto suggests a kind of opening of the Pandora's box, shall we say. So Pluto is in Capricorn. Capricorn also, it's an earth sign, and can, similar to Pluto, it can really embody some of the more difficult areas. It's not light and rainbows in any sense of the word. It's definitely the darker sides of life, the heavier, the more kind of responsible. And so with all this kind of weighing down of, say, responsibility and kind of duty and all of the kind of necessities of life, with Pluto being in the mix, it can be quite earth-shattering, Pluto being in an earth sign, and then Mercury coming in to kind of, Mercury's the messenger. It goes, easily can travel between the dark places and the light. And so with Mercury coming in, it's kind of bringing some messages to and from these darker realms. So, there's very much a sense that there's an opportunity to talk about things. And conjunct Mars, there is it's a bit weighted to the possibility of it collapsing into an argument. So do take care, pause, take a few breaths before speaking, if you can, or communicating, or if you're writing emails or letters, maybe review it a few times before deciding to hit send or posting those letters. And if you are in a face-to-face confrontation with someone, just always know that you can take time out, you can disengage at any time, especially when things are getting heated, to avoid any serious explosions. Which, there it is. It's quite a volcanic energy, which, again, catharsis is sometimes necessary in life, particularly when we aren't in the habit of kind of dealing with things as we go. Things can build up and come to a head. So I use the words awakenings and revelations. So with Scorpio being such a sort of shadowy, secretive sign, and with all of this energy being directed into this space, there is definitely secrets can come out, things that we didn't realize about certain situations, people, places, etc. There may be some new light being thrown on it, which gives us a whole different outlook on it. And again, I would encourage you to take the higher ground, to see things from a higher perspective, if at all possible, and be patient. Try and surrender to the process, keep yourself safe. And there is a lot of opportunity to, if this energy is handled right, actually to really grow and transform and learn new ways to communicate in healthier and more skillful ways. And sometimes we just have to run that gauntlet of all of our triggers and conditioning and so on, just being unleashed to experience some of the unpleasant consequences of being less aware and less conscious and less present, for us to eventually find it within our hearts to love and forgive both ourselves and others. And that brings me to a lotus blooms in the mud. And what I am referring to by that is this placement here of Neptune in Pisces, which it will be in for the rest of this year and for quite some time. But this is at what's called a sextile angle to Pluto. And so with all of that quite chaotic, quite almost anarchic, quite fighty and unpredictable energy, which is quite jarring, really, for the most part, there is a little glimmer of hope in this, which is that Neptune is at a sextile. So Neptune, particularly when it's in its home sign of Pisces, has this capacity through its water element ways to shower a healing balm over this whole situation. And so when I say zoom out and see things from a higher perspective, Neptune in Pisces will allow us to do that. And maybe zooming out is not necessarily the right words to use there. I would say more floating in a blissful pool or in a balmy ocean or something like that, and surrendering to these waves and allowing these waves that may feel quite stormy and choppy to wash over you, and rather than struggling within these potent tides and currents, struggling and potentially drowning within this really challenging time, if we can find a way to surrender and to tune into our spiritual connection, to allow ourselves to be guided by the divine, to be held by the divine, we may find that we can move through all of this. And so, you know, this chart is our kind of foundation stone for this whole cycle ahead. So we're kind of really passing through quite a purifying portal. I want to say rite of passage. It's, you know, we're passing through this really challenging rite of passage, and we just really have to have strong trust in our own capacity and for loving guides that surround us who may not be seen with the physical eye, but with our spiritual eye, we will know that they are there and guiding us through. You know, we may not have the answers right away, but we can trust and know that we are guided, and out of all of this muck and mud and swirling turmoil and chaos, when the waters settle, all of this becomes compost, out of which a beautiful, pure lotus will emerge out through the muddy waters and bloom on through it all, which is what the beautiful lotus flower represents. So I will finish there. There's a lot more I could say about this chart. But that is my reading for the energies of this new moon in Scorpio, this lunar Samhain new moon portal for this next phase. Really a lot going on, but we have the resources to get through this if we can open our hearts to do so. So a lot of love and forgiveness and kindness in the mix can help to transform and heal some of the more instinctive triggers and reactions which almost inevitably will arise unless we are wise Buddhas who have already learned how to express ourselves and carry ourselves through such times. But the rest of us human, very human conditioned beings will find this a bit of a struggle. But through this, we may find through our relationship to power and with our own power, we may find ourselves able to be really honest with how we may abuse power within ourselves, and remembering that the things that we witness in the world are a divine mirror, reflecting back to us some of the darker and more shadowy aspects of our own nature. So there can be this back and forth of reflection and using some of the a more spiritual outlook. These can be transformed for the better. I will leave you with that. I would love to hear any resonances, reflections, comments, anything like that you feel to share. If you took the time to tune in all the way to the end, wishing you a empowered cycle ahead, all the power in all the positive ways. May it be power with to transform into happy and healthy ways, rather than powering over, or being powered over by others. Maybe we learn to stand within our own power in healthy ways to benefit ourselves and others. Sending you lots of love. I'm Fiona from Nourish and Flourish, and I'll see you at the next new moon for the next reading. So take good care.